Welcome to this very special edition of the Fat Boy Show. As you know, on this program, I like to have conversations with interesting people about some very interesting things. And if I had to think of the most interesting person I know of someone who would certainly make the top three on that list. And I am proud to say that that person is joining us today on the Fat Boy Show. And that would be none other than Dr. Stella Nyanzi, or Stella, as she would like to be called. Hi, Stella. How are you?
Hi, fat boy. Top three interesting people? You must know very few interesting people, fat boy. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And hey, happy to see you. You look well. You're glowing.
Thank you. I'm older, wiser, wealthier, happier, more free. You are looking hot, fat boy.
There you go again. Hmm? You like sowing the seeds of confusion every time we speak to each other. I don't know why you do that. I find that very strange.
I think we have a mutual crush for years, over a decade, no?
Well, we have been talking for now about 10 years, I would say. Yeah, so it's about 10 years.
We have been talking, sounds like we have been talking about you know what, but no, we've just been bashing each other. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. I don't like how you think, but yeah, sometimes I think you think very nice. And I like intelligent guys. So let's see how this evening goes. What's the time in Uganda?
Well, the time in Uganda now, it's about 4:30.
4:30. How was your Independence Day?
Well, I would say that it was a day like any other. I mean, what does it even mean to say we're independent? Let's be honest. We are still below all of aside from that, but in as far as the significance of being independent is concerned, I don't think we're really independent. We dance to the tunes of donors, both our leaders and even the opposition. So I don't see ourselves as having anything to celebrate about being independent. But we're alive at least, so we can be glad about that.
Yeah, I don't live in Uganda anymore. So
Yeah, and your exit was, a lot of people thought that was unfortunate. You were a force for good and chaos here in Uganda, positive and negative chaos, some might say. You had, a legal challenge. You were in prison for almost 2 years, I believe, over some spicy words you directed at some very powerful people.
who doesn't need spice, eh? We need spice.
So remind us. So were you acquitted on a technicality? Was it they found that the prosecution didn't have a they made some mistakes in the filing of the case, and that on that technicality the case was thrown out. What were you acquitted? On what basis were you released from custody?
So I've been detained several times. I've been imprisoned twice, both on separate charges of offensive communication and cyber harassment against dictator Yoweri Museveni. I think the specific case you refer to is the acquittal of my second case. It wasn't a technicality really. I think that in terms of legal speech, what happened is that the judge did not go into the main arguments of the case, the merits and demerits of the cases, because there was my appeal that was submitted by my team, and then there was a counter appeal that was submitted by the state prosecutors because I was found guilty of cyber harassment against Museveni, but not guilty of offensive communication. And so I appealed in the case where I appealed in regarding the charges where I was found guilty, and the state appealed where I was found not guilty. And the acquittal was based on jurisdiction, that the magistrate's court which tried me did not have jurisdiction to try my case. So if you call that a technicality, okay. But I'd done 16 years in prison, so I feel as though I was already penalized for
All the 16 months.
16 months. Sorry, did I say years?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm growing old.
you're not that old.
I'm growing old. But yeah, I meant 16 months because I was sentenced to 18 months for just a poem. Fuck Uganda.
Can you tell us what it's like to be in jail in Uganda? I've never visited jail, fortunately, but what's it like? And to have been there for all those months, what are the conditions like? Were you in a cell with other inmates? Were you in your own special cell? What was the deal?
So when you said jail, many Ugandans who haven't been through the system confuse police cells with prison cells. And there's a difference. And then in Uganda, of course, we have all these detention facilities, such as safe houses and torture chambers and basements, which are not even gazetted. And I've been to all three types, right? So if you're asking me what was it like to be in prison, I think that Luzira Women Prison is a class of its own. We have water on days that it's running. We have piped water in each of the wards. We do not have cells, which is a room, as people watch on television. We have wards. And if people have been to boarding schools without beds, it's the arrangement, a long room where inmates sleep mainly on the floor, and in each corner is one of the leadership in that ward. So it could be the Katikiro, who is the prime minister of the ward, sleeping in one corner, and the Asisi or Twaisi of the Asisi comes from assistant of the Katikiro, sleeps in another corner, usually closest to the bathrooms, and then the chief cleaner sleeps opposite the Twaisi, and a person who is in charge of opening the doors sleeps right opposite the door to the ward. And those four people ordinarily would have a bed. So in Ward 2, Luzira Women Prison, which was mainly for remanded prisoners who just arrived from the police. And that's where I slept all the time. I was, for my second case, I slept with pimps and sex workers and petty thieves and women who are intoxicated with all sorts of things and came in because they were too intoxicated to comprehend court processes, and poor women selling on the streets who were arrested as vendors or hawkers or all sorts of petty, business, but couldn't afford to pay the money. And in terms of the ward, it was packed, jam packed, worse than sardines. We slept. Oh, if you were lucky, you got a blanket. If you were not lucky, you slept on the floor. And often we slept. So my legs were to the feet of a person whose feet would be next to the head of a person. Sort of, you lie side by side, and then people come and slide themselves in between the gaps. It was terrible, but it wasn't. What was terrible was failing to learn the pecking order, the politics and power, and how it played. But when one learned how that worked, prison was fine. I refused to get a bed because the floor I discovered was very good for treating backaches. The toilets were terrible. I moved away from all new arrivals sleep very close to the toilets. And so when women have to go to the toilet, they'll jump over our bodies. And in terms of the politics, space is important. So I worked my way through the order and got a space closest to the door.
So when you say toilets, do you mean normal toilets, or were you guys?
So like I said, Luzira Women's Prison is special because we have piped water. And when it was built, when Ward 2, my ward was built, there is one pit latrine, right? But there is a squat toilet. It's called a squat toilet that's supposed to be flushed.
Okay.
Right?
Now, like the Asian toilets.
I don't know an Asian toilet.
But basically, it's the one you don't sit on it. It's like a bowl on the floor.
Yeah, it's a bowl made of ceramic. It used to be white. It's now kind of brown, and the flash thing is up, right? And you pull it. There's a cistern up, which leaks drip, 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 drip. And anyway, so why I'm talking about the toilet is because sleeping closest to that hole was okay on days when there was water. But generally, there's no water. We are closed in at 3 p.m. and there's about 120 bodies. On a good day, there are 80 bodies in a space, and we are packed like that. And we had a tanker, tankers, like a drum, a petrol drum, pipa, a pipa? Pipa, a drum. When you go to the petrol station, there are these metallic drums, barrels in which petrol is shipped into the country. In villages, people put these under their roofs to keep water. But boy, you're a rich child who doesn't know what a pipa is, a drum. Anyway, so it was the duty of the prisoners to fill these drums with water during the day, but it didn't matter how full the drum was. If you're 120 bodies and you need to draw a bucket of water to empty the pit or squat toilet, it didn't work. So by midnight, those toilets are full, there's no water. So sleeping nearest the toilet is what happened for newbies. You said, how was prison? Those toilets were terrible. It was my worst nightmare because there were illnesses. As I said, I was in a ward with many sex workers who had a lot of STIs and UTIs, and we were always sick. We always scratched and itched and leaked because there was no supplies. Yeah, you can make your nose like that. There was no medical supplies in the clinic, the prison clinic. For the sort of UTIs and STIs and VDs. So UTI for urinary tract infections, VDs for venereal diseases, and STIs for sexually transmitted infections that we got from the toilet. So candida, chlamydia, the itch, the
UTIs.
And I think for me that was my
UTIs, obviously.
Yeah, and it became constant. I think when I was released, I had to get treated for all sorts of venereal diseases, genitourinary tract infections you get even if one hasn't been having sex, because we share the same facility that doesn't have water running it. And the bathrooms are 2 small cubicles for 120 women. So I think my worst nightmare was the toilet system because it introduced illnesses that I really didn't know. But then the bed bugs and the lice, they flowed from the bodies. It didn't matter how clean one was.
You would just keep
the lice just
reinfecting yourself or being
Yeah. And when I was there, I'd ask the head of the prison services to ensure we had fumigation. So the prison wardresses hated me. I was collecting lice. I would pay prison women the prisoners to give me your lice. I will give you mandazi. And I will keep the lice as evidence of a problem. And there was a time I had a small jar, 3/4 full with bed bugs and lice, which women picked off their bodies. And if you gave me 2 body lice, I gave you 2 mandazi. And part of the problem is that the system did not believe that prisoners, that our hygiene or our sanitation mattered. And so part of the work that I did for me was to say, when I'm in Ward 2, we introduce our own cleaning routine. I'd order for my own detergent and stuff. And I introduced a Saturday cleaning, and I introduced toilet paper. I introduced all these things that make life a bit better for prison women. How was prison? The work was terrible. There was a lot of hard labor, chopping firewood, like felling trees.
So you said,
Powers.
if I may interject, you mentioned that, life in prison is nothing like you would see on TV. So when you talk about a women's prison, I'm thinking about shows like Orange is the New Black, that kind of madness, that kind of chaos. It seemed to have had its own humorous moments, but obviously it was no fun for you. I've heard many medical professionals discuss how, especially in male prisons, that the rate of HIV transmission is very high amongst the inmates because, as you described, bodies piled on bodies, it's inevitable that those with such an inclination might be persuaded to seek physical encounters with fellow inmates, or those even without those inclinations ordinarily would simply need an avenue to I guess for a release, and so they would. I don't know if it's a thing, but they become gay temporarily while they're in prison, and then they get HIV, and so the rate of inmates in male prisons contracting HIV is very high because there's inmates having sex with inmates. Is that something that you was prevalent in the women's facility while you were there? Is it something you noticed?
So you know that the biology for HIV infection for men is not the same as it is for women, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, so receptive partners would need a penetrating partner who is HIV infected. Exchange of fluids is important for transmission of HIV to happen, right? If it's unprotected with a condom, then there are even higher chances.
Oh yeah, and they
If it is
in the male prisons they do distribute condoms. From what I hear.
yes, and we can talk about because prison officially denies it, but we know there are condoms there. But I don't want to talk about the male prison because I've never been a male prisoner, but I have been to the female prison. And I was going to say in terms of HIV, because the argument has been made that there are relatively lower levels. The prevalence rate and incidence rates of HIV in female prisons is low. And I was saying that in terms of the biology, in terms of prisons, sometimes there is consent, but many times it's forced anal intercourse, where either a prisoner who has to be punished is forcefully penetrated by one or more partners, often without protection. And I think because of the lack of consent, there's no time to use the protection.
To negotiate the politics of protection. There's no time.
Yeah.
In that.
And now, in terms of how women have sex, there's a totally different biology, right? But sex in prisons is human. It's human for people who need to express themselves and need physical release to have sex. One of the most outrageous things for me was the refusal of probes into the female prison. So deodorants were banned because women were using them to so, and I said, if you're refusing deodorants, refuse parole and so on.
No cylindrical objects were allowed.
Yeah, so
anything that could be used for.
No, but look, you have to kind of have fingers. One of the best masturbatory tools I have and know that very quickly brings release is the fingers. You'd have to chop off my fingers, but even more than that,
they can't do that, can they?
I mean, in the mind, take away my brain. Then, if you don't want me to masturbate, I won't imagine what needs to be imagined in order for me to get release. And so I was saying that for me, the thinking of the prison authority around denying women pleasure is so basic.
Did you find yourself having to take care of business that way while you were incarcerated?
Do I masturbate? Is that your question? Do women masturbate?
Did you?
I want to talk about women to women relationships in prison, right? Because Pastor is talking about the issue of violence. It is harder for women to violently have sex with each other as a form of punishment, because the sort of sexual intimacy that women have is really about intimacy more than rape. It's harder for women to rape each other as a mode of punishment. To penetrate a woman and have sex with her to the point of orgasm is not going to be punitive. It's harder for it to be, especially if it's vaginal sex, it's not going to be punishment. So women are violent in other ways that are not sexual. There was a lot of stabbing and knifing and beating each other in prison. And so in terms of the low incidence meaning new cases of HIV upon arrival in prison, it's lower because of the biology of our bodies. But in terms of women desiring each other and having sex with each other and forming relationships with each other, one of my best friends was called Grace, and Grace was intersex. And Grace had gone to Somali as a soldier and had made a lot of money, which Grace was sending to the family. And when Grace came back to Uganda after 4 years on the front line in Somali, the uncle had spent Grace's money and not invested in a plot of land and a building which Grace thought that they were sending money for. So Grace got their gun and shot at this uncle, and Grace was charged with murder. And Grace admitted and was therefore condemned, found guilty and punished. So Grace, as an intersex person, entered Luzira Women Prison, but Grace's body was the body of an intersex person. Grace in prison performed the gender of a man. Grace put on shorts, which they sewed from the uniform we have. Grace was very good at changing the bulbs up in the ceiling. Grace was very good at chopping firewood. Grace is the one who slaughtered the bulls that we ate on Christmas. Grace really worked like a young man, and Grace had very many relationships with women because Grace was able to get a penetration or an erection and was able to make love with women as a man's body would. So what happens?
Wait a minute.
What?
Oh, so that's what you mean when you said she's intersex, as in she is carrying both organs. So she has a vagina and a penis.
Grace was born intersex, meaning they have ambiguous genitals.
Hang on, but I thought intersex people, usually one organ isn't functional. Like they're not fully functional in both senses. Like, so if it's intersex, then probably she may have a womb and ovaries, but then the penis doesn't work.
Intersexuality is a spectrum, is a spectrum of things.
I'm talking about the physical aspect.
Grace was able to get an erection. The thing that looked like a big clitoris was able to, during puberty, during adolescence, Grace discovered that their clitoris, which looked like a big clitoris in mornings, would get an erection. There's another person, Juliet. You know Julius Kagwa, who was Juliet Kagwa in Gayaza?
Oh, the activist?
Yeah, I mean, I have Julie's book here. But Juliet was in Gayaza. Yes, here. Wait. I'm in my library, so you're lucky. Wait. So this person, it's upside down. I don't know how to do it. Anyway, so this person, Julius Kagwa, is my OG in Gayaza. Was born intersex, raised as a girl, and when we joined Gayaza and menstruation begins for many people, Juliet never got a period. Juliet was born again and played guitar and was really a child of God. And then when we were getting breasts and periods, Julius got balls, testes, two little balls growing. And then in this book that Juliet wrote when they were still Juliet, and on the journey to becoming Julius, Juliet wrote that she used to get erections in the morning. So some intersex people may have both organs, and as you said, some would have a dominant gender or a dominant biological sex expressed, but portrayed through their bodies. But others actually have dualities that continue throughout their lives. And that is why in terms of intersex rights, we often say that children should not have their parents forcing one gender upon them when they're children, but let them decide when they're 18. But yes.
Were the wardens aware of her condition, and would they keep an eye out on her, just in case she...
The wardens were aware when I was at Luzira, because I wanted to get to the lesbian complaints. There's so many lesbian suspicions. I was suspected of being a lesbian.
Aren't you?
Because, am I a lesbian? No, I'm actually, to disappoint, I'm heterosexual. I'm cisgender heterosexual. I have sex with men. I don't have any problem with my body, but I'm a lesbian rights defender. I'm a gay men's rights defender. I'm a trans rights defender. And I think that my gender identity, my sexual identity should not determine my politics and my activism. I'm an ally of the community. And my heterosexuality has nothing to do with my politics as an activist. who I fuck or don't fuck. But I had very close relationships with a very old woman who was called a night dancer, and everybody hated and distanced themselves from her. She was really isolated. People feared her because they thought she would eat them. And this old woman, like everybody called her Jaja, she had a toothless gum apart from one tooth. And because of that, eating was very difficult for her. And she was put in a cell. So the cells, I was explaining, that the wards are where all other prisoners live. But the cells are for people who have infectious diseases, so tuberculous and mentally ill people, and rich, wealthy political prisoners who can afford to pay for a bed. But Jaja slept in one of these small cells because everybody feared, because she'd wake up at night and she had to run to the toilets, which were very far away. She'd run naked. She didn't have time to dress up. So people said she was a night dancer because she'd run naked to the toilet. So they distanced themselves from her. But Jaja was my friend. I learned her problem was her gum, which had wounds, so she wasn't able to eat well. And I began to eat with her because I was having a cook. I had a cook. If you can afford, you can have a cook in prison. And I ate with mentally ill people. I ate with those elderly people. And Jaja became very close to me. There was rehabilitation. And then there were rumors that I was having sex with Jaja. But Jaja was toothless. Jaja was totally... She was a very sweet old woman who was troubled because people hated her. And because they hated her, she hated them. She insulted them. She spat at them. But there were rumors in prison that I was having sex with Jaja.
So the rumors were not true. You were not having sex with Jaja.
No, what I mean is, but sex, like how do you kiss a woman without teeth? I'd eat food with her, and it was so difficult because even chewing meat was a problem for her. It would drip.
What does teeth have to do with sex? Just asking.
So for me, in terms of the foreplay that I love to kiss a lot. But when I told Jaja that they were saying we were lesbian, at first she was like, what? And I was like, Jaja, can I kiss you, for example? She was like, but how? Like, ew, like disgusting. Like, why do white people even kiss? But just the idea that a small, emaciated woman who ate food with me every day was also, I had bribed her to have sex with me, began a whole huge fire around lesbianism in the prison.
All right.
My other
you didn't have sex with Jaja, and you didn't have sex with anybody else.
No, but I was going to tell you about the different lesbian, because they're lesbians in prison.
I would imagine so.
Lesbians in prison.
I'm asking about you. So in the 16 months you were there, you never got tempted to mess around with any of them?
I'm not inclined to sexual attraction to women. I have a lot of intimate relationships with women. Sorry?
Like I said, in confined spaces, especially prison circumstances, people code switch opportunistically.
Dude,
you've heard of that?
My libido in prison was affected by a miscarriage. Right? I was beaten and tortured by prison wardresses. I entered prison pregnant. I bled almost to death. And then the recovery process for me was very difficult. There was no time for my post-abortion related challenges to even want to mess up with sex with anyone, let alone a man, right? So I think part of perhaps there would have been opportunities for me to experiment because there are very many beautiful women in prison. There's so much time and we sleep so congested. I had power, I had money, I had time on my hands. If I wanted, I would have had a lover. But my own health challenges as a result of the torture by prison wardresses in prison did not allow me to even feel sexual. Like my sexual body was sick most of the time. If I didn't have infections with things itching, I was leaking. If I wasn't leaking, I was dripping. If I wasn't dripping, I was anemic. If I wasn't anemic, it was terrible.
I'm sure the authorities would prefer that those who are incarcerated focus more on their inner spiritual battles rather than their carnal battles. So,
but there is lesbian sex and lesbian relationships happening in Luzira women prison. And we would even have relationships between the staff and the prisoners. We would also have relations.
Male stuff.
No. I'm talking about women staff prison. So prison wardresses who are lesbian at Rosita Women Prison and prisoners, but also in the leadership, especially women who've been found guilty and convicted to long periods. That is how relationships are formed. That the idea that a deodorant will be used is often not about masturbation alone, but it will be used to pleasure others, right?
Just
And I
just
know
for the record, do you think a deodorant, and I'm assuming like you mean like the roll-ons one, the roll-ons with the circular heads. Um, is that what some people are using in there?
you can use anything. I say to you, fingers, carrots, cabbages, feet. If you take away the fingers, we have the feet. You know, it just takes a bit of the imagination. But you changed the topic. Women were named on lists regularly and sent to the prison wardresses, and there was punishment for being suspected of being a lesbian in Luzira Women Prison. My name was always on those lists. So I began to find out about the lesbian rings, what happens, and oh my God, there's a party going on there for especially convicted long-term uh, prisoners who are think that they're young, they have a high libido, they have time, they have adjusted to being prisoners in that environment. Some of them have power and status, some of them also have money, and then they can afford to form relationships, very close, intimate relationships. And I think that while you said it is temporary, it is situational homosexuality because they're in prison and they don't have partners, some of the most beautiful lesbian relationships I witnessed were in prison. So are some of the most violent ones, where, for example, a polygamous lesbian was jealous of their lover getting others. So you asked me about sex in prison. It happens. There is also you are asking about I think prison conditions, and I wanted to say for me that part of the biggest problem was the mental health problems that women prisoners had, as well as the challenges that pregnant prisoners face. There are a number of abortions and miscarriages that happen because of the difficult conditions. And the third sort of category of women I was always worried about were women who come in with mental illness accusations, because then they are forced to take these psychiatric drugs, which many times complicate their time in prison because they can't do anything, they're not functional, and then they're punished. Fat boy, you've disappeared on me.
I'm right here.
But yeah, when I left prison, I stole a uniform. I stole a prison uniform because the prisoner system stole my baby from me. And when I was coming to Germany, I made sure that I carried my prison uniform. The day that I get justice, those prison wardresses who beat me, the day that they are penalized, because I reported to the prison authorities, I reported to the headquarters of prison, I reported to the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and I reported to the magistrate and the judges who are responsible for my cases, and none of them made justice. So when I was leaving prison, I stole a prison uniform. It is not permissible, but I did it. And I carried that prison uniform with me here in Germany. If you want to see, I can show it to you. I was reading poetry in it the other day, so it's right here. They cannot say to me that I didn't take a prison uniform.
Wow.
Do you want to see?
Okay. Yeah, please.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
But you have to switch the topic. So I bring my uniform as you're just showing just your screen. Don't show me because I have to get it.
Oh, okay. So,
yes, like that.
I'll,
Let me get you my
nice
uniform.
look.
It's just here. Talk to yourself. I'll be hearing.
Okay, so when you say you're getting your uniform, did you mean that you are going to get dressed? You're going to take off what you're wearing, then dress in the uniform, and then come?
No, I'm just picking it from the laundry. I have a laundry basket here in my room, which is also my. Why are you laughing?
Okay, I was worried you were going to treat us to a striptease.
But I can also just wear it on top of my. I don't have to undress to dress up, you know. But yeah, I'm back
Okay.
right here. You have to touch your gadgets. So I have seen Bayine saying that I am lying. This is my prison uniform. This oil over here is very special oil which the wardress the catechiros of prison, they write Luzira Women Prison on it, remand, and I never rubbed off my name. My name is still on the uniform. Where is it?
Wow, there it is.
You see it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Stella Nyanzi. Yeah, so I labeled my uniforms because we steal each other's uniforms in prison. Oops, can you see it?
Yes.
Maybe I should do it like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so until I get justice for my baby who was beaten out of my womb, I still keep this uniform. I could wear it like this for you.
I would imagine you don't like the color. It's a very political color, isn't it? That one.
In Uganda, yellow is associated with Yoweri Museveni, but the sunshine is yellow.
Oh wait.
Bananas which I love are yellow. Pineapples are yellow. So I refuse to give up my rights to yellow. And for me, it's just a symbolic act, a reminder that whatever I do, if I find peace and citizenship in Germany, for example, I have to go back and get justice for my baby. I still have some work to do with the Uganda prison services.
You know, this is the first time I'm hearing about the baby, and I'm really.
Really? Yeah, no, but I reported. No, I think I heard you saying you were one of the journalists who said I was lying. A number of journalists said I was lying. But no.
Actually wasn't aware. And I'm sure people might have been curious about the circumstances. How far along were you, if you can tell us?
So during my activism about my job at Makerere University, I fell in love with a young man, and we'd been trying to get pregnant for a while. I was maybe 45. I was quite old, but I was thinking, I want to solidify my relationship with this guy. So we tried for a baby, and I wasn't getting pregnant. And then I think just before I got arrested, because I was arrested as I marched to Makerere to get the police to escort me to my office, which Mamdani had chased me out of, and the tribunal had instructed Makerere to reinstate me, but instead Mamdani had put soldiers, policemen, outside Misa to make sure I was banned forever from going. So I had gone to the police to get them to escort me, and I was with this man, my lover at the time. And I think part of the fracas was that in the excitement of trying to fight against Makerere, I didn't realize I'd also conceived. So when I entered prison, I wasn't even aware I was pregnant. How far into my pregnancy? Maybe 3 months, maybe 2 months. But the prisoners, when we are admitted the second day after, so we arrive and then we go for registration. The second day we go to the sick bay where blood is taken away from us and we're tested. So during the test, I was asked for a urine sample and the results came back positive. It's called an HCG test, like a pregnancy test for protein that pregnant women carry. It was positive. And the nurse was very scared that I had tested positive. So she ensured that I was called back to the sick bay, instructed the prisoner in charge of the sick bay to escort me to the toilet to get a second sample of urine. And I remember thinking, why are they asking me for a second sample of urine? And she also ensured that the prisoner in charge of the sick bay was present as I actually obtained, as I susued in this little can. And then it was tested, and both tests were positive. And so
You didn't. So when you went to prison, you weren't aware. It wasn't until.
because I'd been trying to get pregnant for maybe 2 years, and I wasn't.
Can you imagine? That has to be. I mean, that's like triple tragedy. I mean, first of all, at that age, conceiving isn't easy.
Yeah.
And to have succeeded in that at that late stage, only to lose it under these circumstances, it must be heartbreaking. I can't even imagine how painful that is.
That is why I cut off my dreadlocks in prison. If you remember, so you say you weren't aware, but during that moment, many of the journalists who would come to prison to interview me would ask about my hair because I cut off my dreadlocks. I was in so much pain of losing a gift I had received late. As you said, I was late in terms of age, but also a gift that how the baby was taken away from me is just unfair. I'm supposed to be in prison for safe custody. But the idiots, they tortured me. They
if if the baby hadn't been lost, it would have been born while you were in prison because you were there for 16 months.
And women do give birth in prison. I was saying to you that one of the hardest, the women who began to eat with me, because I had a cook, I would cook and we'd share food daily, were pregnant mothers about to deliver, and old women and mentally sick people, because women do deliver in. And I've written part of the poems I wrote really in prison, coming from a place of pain, were about prisoners who'd eaten food with me and either lost a baby giving birth in prison because there was no support. If a woman gives birth at night and they had not been transferred to the sick bay, the prison wardress says, do not open that door. It doesn't matter how much we scream. The title for the Afandes in prison is Mukulu. So we'd scream, Mukulu, Mukulu, Mukulu. This woman is giving birth. Mukulu, come and help. Mukulu. And eventually, when the baby begins to peep, when its head begins to peep, it's the prisoners who have to bring a blanket and have to bring a razor blade, and many times are delivering babies without gloves or anything until morning, when the pregnant woman is then carried to the sick bay. And if it's a complicated delivery, the pregnant woman is transported to Makshon Bay, to the main hospital in prison. So, yeah, women who actually are pregnant, I wouldn't have been the first to deliver in prison. They do this all the time.
So I would imagine that ever since you were released from custody, that your attitude is mostly informed by your experiences there. And I'm curious to know if since then you've taken steps to engage the authorities in terms of any kind of reform that should be done for the prison system, especially for female inmates. Do you feel like there are organizations that are doing what is necessary to address some of these issues? Many of the problems you pointed out.
I mean, so when I just, because I've been to prison twice now, every time I leave, I have all these engagements with the prison services, with the police, with lawyers, with some organizations that have permission to visit prisons. So Uganda Red Cross, Uganda Red Crescent, the Uganda Human Rights Commission. I have been to them to say, can you do more about women prisoners? In terms of the government, they are not willing, they're reticent to listen and engage with me because they say I'm a dissident. Also, they have framed me as a liar. The prison services had the director of medical services in prisons coming to confirm that I'd suffered the loss of my baby. I showed him this thing that came out of me. I gave it to him. He saw it. He wrote, and I was denied my antenatal and post-abortion care medical notes. I have fought for those in the system. And so, yes, to answer your question, I have tried to engage with the prison system, with the government, but they say I'm lying about the miscarriage that happened. The Uganda Human Rights Commission did send scouts to come and investigate, and the women who were willing to give evidence about my miscarriage at the hands of prison wardresses were threatened with extended punishment, that they would get more punishment after I left. And this happens to many convicts who are seen to be working against the prison established system. So to answer your question, part one, yes, I did. But the carrying of this prison uniform to Germany for me is a reminder that even when I arrive and don't want to get back to Uganda's problems, even when I get resettled elsewhere, I have a mission in the Ugandan prisons. Maybe my baby will never come back to me, but there are women who are pregnant in Luzira Women Prison and in all the other prison facilities in Uganda whose babies must not be punished because their mothers are either suspects who are remanded to prison or convicts or even appellants who are appealing against their punishments.